Like many of you, I'm very excited for the refresh Model 3 to come everywhere else in the globe because in my opinion, it's just kind of the best overall car ever. And while there have actually been confirmed deliveries now across Europe, Tesla only refreshed the rear-wheel drive Model 3 and long range. There was no talk about a performance metric, and of course, they won't even acknowledge its existence in the United States. None of the North American-based Tesla Twitter accounts, including this one employee's account, Ellen Musk, who has a few followers. Yeah, they will not talk about it. Like, even on earnings calls when asking, when is that coming to the US, they just don't acknowledge its existence. But it may be because they're not quite done yet with the refreshed Model 3. It's got a lot of great changes, plenty of new things to talk about already, and yeah, it's kind of slowly launching across Europe first, and I'm sure in Asia as well, but thanks to some leaks through a Tesla Model 3 parts catalog, we might actually see what Tesla has in store for the refresh of the performance Model 3. So yeah, while I'm sure it will come with new taillights and the new ventilated seats and the no more gear stocks, all of that's going to be brought over as well. But actually, thanks to this parts catalog leaking some information that I don't think was supposed to be leaked yet, we can see some new badging that they're planning to add to the Model 3 that might tell us a little bit more than Tesla originally wanted, because we see this badge on the back, this rectangular badge, that at first glance you might think, oh, this is very plaid-esque, and there's a lot of people that were thinking maybe they're going to bring the plaid powertrain to the Model 3 to kind of up the performance. But if you take a closer look, you'll realize that that badge is actually not the plaid branding, but more of the ludicrous branding that Tesla has not used in a while because, of course, once they went to tri-motor, that's when they got the plaid, all referencing the original Spaceballs movie where plaid was at the very end, like the fastest the ship could go. But before plaid, you hit ludicrous speed, and that's what they built into Teslas for years. There were particular special animations whenever you would launch the car in ludicrous mode. I think what they're planning to make sure the Model 3 doesn't completely kill off the sales of the Model S and X is they're gonna bring ludicrous mode to the Model 3, which as of right now, it's just kind of got a sport mode. There's a track mode and stuff to activate some more features, but there's never been like specialized animations or specialized branding to say, hey, this is a ludicrous mode Model 3. And that's what I think the badging is likely hinting at, and I'm sure it'll have a spoiler as well as some new performance tires, which we see in the parts catalog as well. And it should be mentioned that shortly after articles started being written about this new ludicrous Model 3, Tesla updated the parts catalog and took away all references to this updated performance model. Either the plans might not be completely finalized yet, or they realized that this was actually leaking things prematurely, which is why, in my opinion, it'd be better to announce this stuff a couple months before you start deliveries, because it's probably gonna leak anyway, and then all of us YouTubers are just gonna speculate on it. But yeah, tires that look a lot like the arachnid wheels that are on the plaid Model S, but I'm assuming maybe a little bit smaller to be more optimized for the Model 3 performance. Dedicated ludicrous branding, and if it's getting ludicrous mode, I assume that means that yes, the refresh Model 3, which is a tad more aerodynamic, might also be a little bit faster once they finally refresh the performance model. Now, who's to say how much faster it's gonna be? Your guess is as good as mine, but just to give a little bit of context on how insane it is that the Model 3 could be getting ludicrous mode, the current Model 3 performance can do 0 to 60 in just barely over 3 seconds, and ludicrous, back when that was an option on the Model S and X, basically was when it started dipping into the sub 3 second zone. So my guess is the ludicrous Model 3 is going to have a 0 to 60 time close to 2.5 seconds, maybe a little bit longer, like 2.6, but I gotta wonder if Tesla is making the Model 3 this much better because it already has a ton of advantages now over the Model S. You know, it's got the fixed horn button, it's smaller, it's got better proportions, and it brought over a lot of Model S features. It's substantially cheaper than the Model S. It qualifies for the federal tax credit while still having a lot of great performance, and it can sit 5. It's just an overall very capable vehicle for the money, and they just improved it with all of the ambient lighting and everything. So Model S demand is probably already not looking too great, and if they are working on a ludicrous Model 3, I definitely think that might not necessarily kill off the sales of the plaid Model S, but the long-range Model S, yeah, I feel like that's getting harder and harder to justify, especially if you know anything about EVs and how the maximum range number doesn't necessarily translate to all that much in the real world. Like, as long as you've got a good charging network and good charging uptime and a decent charging curve, then whether your maximum range is 330 miles or 400 miles doesn't really mean you travel all that different on a trip. So if the higher end performance Model 3 starts dipping into the sub 3 second 0 to 60 times, then yeah, the long range Model S is going to be a lot harder of a sale. It's going to cost way more. It's a lot bigger, I suppose, but it'll be slower, car and not have the ambient lighting that the Model 3 has, be a little bit harder to park. The visibility, in my opinion, having ridden and sat in the Model S and the Model 3, I think the Model 3 just has so much better visibility from the rear view perspective. I guess the Model S still has a hatchback instead of a trunk, so there's some advantages, but are you going to be willing to spend, you know, an extra 15 to 20 grand just for those advantages? Probably not. So I think there's a very real scenario where if they're bringing all of these great updates to the Model 3, which will inevitably find their way into the Model Y given enough time, maybe Tesla's planning on scaling back Model S and X production to where they get to a point where you only can get the Plaid. Like, tri-motor becomes the only option for the S and X. They recently just increased the price on the Plaid Model X by $5,000, so there definitely appears to be some demand there, at least for the tri-motor, but that might be the only thing that it actually has over the Model 3 and Y. And if they're trying to simplify the manufacturing lines, keep things simple, then just eliminating any other options that, you know, don't qualify for federal tax credits and can't find enough of their own market. I'd be kind of interested to see if Tesla just does tri-motor for the S and X, and then the Model 3 might get really fast with ludicrous mode, but it'll still be dual motor. In fact, the current rumors going around right now are suggesting that the Model 3 isn't quite big enough to accommodate for the Plaid powertrain, but they could take the front motor from the Plaid powertrain, you know, have just two of those, one in the front, one in the back of the Model 3, and that's what unlocks this new game-changing ludicrous mode, which is still going to be absurdly fast, of course, for the money. We're talking about a sedan that's in the $60,000 price range that's capable of doing 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds, which is just absurd. But yeah, it'll probably get a horsepower boost and an acceleration boost for sure, but I don't think 3 motors is coming to the Model 3. I know, it would sound perfect, right? 3 motors, 333 miles of range on the Model 3. Yeah, that all sounds cool, but physically, I think the Plaid powertrain just takes up too much space, and the Model 3 is just objectively a smaller vehicle than the Model S. You know, they had to widen the back of the Model S to accommodate for that powertrain, so unless they found some amazing miniaturization tech, I don't think it's going to happen. But what do you guys want to see on the more performance-oriented Model 3? Hopefully track mode ships with it by default. That would be great. Let me know your thoughts and hopes down in the comments below, and thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.